What's up, everybody? I'm Kelly Johnson, the host of the Daily Grind podcast, the official podcast of the Kelly Johnson Foundation. The goal of our foundation is to make a difference and share and support future leaders. Tune in today's episode and follow our podcast on Spotify and Apple to stay up to date with all the content and events. Links are in the description. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Grind. My name is Kelly Johnson, your fun and friendly host. We're in episode 26 of season 7, the very best one yet. I'll keep the introduction short because we have a special guest on today's podcast. I'd like to introduce Rob Gresham. Rob has over 30 years of experience in the restaurant industry, starting at age 15. Since then, he's helped to create, manage, and operate some of the best restaurant brands in the U.S., including Chipotle and CAVA. In 2023, he opened Isaac's Poultry Market, award-winning fast casual restaurant with 2 locations in Montgomery County, Maryland. Isaac's won Best Sandwich in the state of Maryland, and they finished in the top 10 of the World Food Championships. His extensive culinary background from hands-on approach has given him the knowledge, creativity, and skill to create Isaac's from the ground up with heart and soul and a flair as unique to Rob. So welcome to Rob.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are excited to have you on the show, Rob. Our listeners are beyond excited to learn more about your story, what you do. So might throw some restaurant culinary puns your way. So I'm going to hand the culinary equipment off to you if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your daily grind.
Yeah, I mean, you said it very well. My daily grind is we created Isaac's Poultry Market in the middle of the pandemic, me and my family. And it was a time when the world wasn't very happy with themselves, with each other at 2020. A lot of protests, a lot of anger, people locked at home. And I wanted to create a restaurant that would bring as many people together as possible. So it took me over 2 years to write all the recipes. I would try to eliminate as many food allergens as possible. Right now, we're about 95% gluten-free. We'll probably need 5 restaurants to have enough buying power to go to 100% gluten-free. We're certified halal. It's kind of the mindset, no matter what your religion or your allergy is, you should be able to go to a restaurant and not worry about getting sick. But now the daily grind is just grow the brand, grow sales, and try to add more restaurants.
Yeah, really well said. Again, we're excited to learn more about your story and then share your wealth of knowledge in this space with our listeners, our daily grinders out there tuning in today's show. Before we hit, current state on the plate, you want to throw us back to early days. You mentioned family. Like, how did you first get into the restaurant industry? Was it influence from your family? How did you start at a young age?
At 15, I realized that if I wanted a car, I needed money. So I started washing dishes at a all-you-can-eat seafood place, and it was gross. But it was working. I was making money, and the week of my 16th birthday, I was able to start being a sauté cook. But in the early 90s at an all-you-can-eat seafood place, that means just add butter and microwave. But sauté nonetheless. And I've really only been in kitchens ever since. I was a kitchen manager at a steakhouse when I was 18. I was still in high school, which is not a good business decision. You don't let an 18-year-old run your kitchen. And I've from full service restaurants. I always loved being in the kitchen, loved being with the people in the kitchen. I always say we're our own band of pirates. All are very different, but we all get along very well. I even met my wife in a restaurant. I was in the kitchen and she was bartending while she was in law school. And we've been married almost 21 years. And when we got married, I was at a place called Eatsy's Market and Bakery. And I was working about 120 hours a week. And after about 6 months, she was like, this isn't going to work. Like, you got to choose me or the job because what's the point of being married? We never see each other. Thankfully, I liked her more than I liked my job. And I was like, all right, now what am I going to do? I don't want to work late nights because I'd rather be with her. But kitchens is all I know. And a friend of mine introduced me to Bob Blessing, who was the COO of Chipotle at the time. And so I got to talk to him and this guy, Phil Petrelli, who was the regional director. And they sold a really great story about how amazing Chipotle was and how they can have a life and still work in restaurants and enjoy themselves and, to deal with drunk people and servers. And I was like, I'm in. And they were right. It was awesome. I loved working there. And it was very different pace, very different than full service restaurants. And I absolutely fell in love with it. And I, I don't want to say never, but I might never go back to full service restaurants. And then from there, they were at 600 stores. I was with them when they went public, and it still felt like a family, which was amazing to me. I've done these stores around the country, publicly traded, and Steve Ellis would still come into your store, like he'd interact with you. He's approachable, like it was truly a family atmosphere. But their operations were so amazing, like anybody could run their stores, and so I was getting bored because I like building and creating, and I tend to like chaos. Um, so I left them and went to La Prima Catering, which is in the DC area. At the time, had 6 kitchens from Northern Virginia to Philadelphia. Um, Very successful, but not as efficient and as profitable as they should be. So I was kind of hired to just go from kitchen to kitchen to make them more efficient. And I absolutely loved that. Like, full service catering was a lot of fun. Um, like Dave Evans, who was the owner, unfortunately passed away, but was one of the greatest bosses I ever worked for. Um, Probably the first one that truly allowed me to be me and be creative as I could be and enjoy it. And then I was friends with Ted Christos, who was one of the founders of CAVA. They had the full service restaurants, and they had their dips and spreads and regionally in Whole Foods. And he called me one day and said, "Hey, I got this guy that wants to make a Chipotle version of my restaurants. Can you meet with us? I don't know that side of the business." So I met with them and went to dinner, and it was Brett Schulman, who was the CEO. And had dinner and talked to him the next day. Ted called me. He's like, "What'd you think?" I was like, "Man, that guy is probably the smartest person I ever met. You need to hold on to him." And he's like, "All right, I'll let you know." And then, say about 6 months later, I got an email from Brett asking to meet for coffee. And so I met with him. And my first question was, "I noticed your email said Brett at Cava Meze." He's like, "Yeah, I'm the CEO." So they got their full service restaurants. I'm helping them clean up the dips business, but we're going to go forward with this grill concept. And he's like, "Maybe at store 5, we could afford you and you can come join us." I was like, "Maybe." I was like, "I'm really happy where I'm at. Like, I would love what I'm doing." So we'll see. But over the next couple of years, he and I met and just talked about labor performance, kitchen layouts, designs, equipment. Nothing about food, because Dimitri Moshevides is one of the greatest chefs I've ever worked with. And when you have him as a founder, you don't need help. Um, and, and he just kept saying, "Maybe it's store 5." I'm like, "Oh, maybe." And then December 2010, we had an obscene amount of catering going out, and we were feeding the King of Jordan for lunch. And Brett called me early in the morning, which he never does. And so I answered. He's like, "I don't know what I'm thinking." He's like, "Those guys have their business. They're not going to help me. They can't help me full time. So if we're going to do this, we got to do it right. I need you, and I need you now." I was like, "I'm feeding the King of Jordan in like 4 hours. Can you uh, send me an offer, and I'll call you tonight?" And I did, and talked to him on the way home. And got home. My wife goes, "How was work?" It's like, "It was great. Met the King. He was amazing." She's like, "Oh, it's great. Are you guys busy tomorrow?" I'm like, "No, we have no orders. Giving everybody a day off, but I'm going to go give Dave my notice." She's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "I'm going to Cabo." She's like, "No, you're not." I was like, "No, I am." She's like, "No, you're not." I said, "I am. I'm going to take a 50% pay cut." Um, so you can imagine the shock on her face. And so we sat down and talked about it. I just told her, I said, "There's something about this guy, Brett, and this concept. This is the one I got to do. If I don't, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life." Um, so she's awesome and backed me, and the rest is history.
Wow, quite the story, quite the grind from a young age, and continue to thrive in this space. And then, yeah, I would say maybe from a transition question here, Rob, like what inspired you then to thus, I guess, pursue, Isaac's, becoming an entrepreneur yourself, business owner. Yeah, tell us more.
Yeah, I, you know, still love CAVA. Like
Mhm.
they're the best. They're family for life. Like I said, I love building. I love creating. Like, I love doing it. And we got to a point at CAVA where my job was more morphing into office roles and a lot more meetings and a lot more away from the operations team. We're in the stores and the restaurants and the area leaders, the people that I want to spend my days with. Um, and it just wasn't as fun. Um, and so I went to Brett and I said, it's time for me to go. And he was amazing. And he said, no. And we had already purchased Zoe's. And he said, look at the organizational chart of both businesses and just tell me what job you need. I don't want you to leave. It's like, well, I love you, but I got to go. It's time, and there was we had hired a COO, and I think he said it best. Uh, and he's like, I understand why you're leaving. He's like, what you and Brett did to create this is terrifying to me. He was like, I would never do that. And he goes, now it's time to hand it off to the professional managers. He goes, he's like, that's what I like. I like clipboards and I like everything being routine and everything the same. And we can make sure we grow and everything's the same. And I was like, yeah, that sounds terrible to me. And he was like, that's why you need people like you to get it to a point, and you need people like us to take it the rest of the way. And I was like, I agree 100%. So I left and started a consulting business, which I'm very thankful was very successful from the beginning. I did not have to go out and try to find any business. I was introduced to people by friends. Coworkers at CAVA introduced me to other friends that own restaurants. Our vendors, our kitchen designer introduced me to people that needed help. So I got very busy very quick, helping fast casuals and full service restaurants. And then the pandemic hit, and nobody needs a consultant when you can barely keep the restaurant open. So I was home, and it was during that time, after a couple of weeks of dog walking and bread making. My younger son was still in Montgomery County public schools, and their online learning was non-existent. He was basically playing Xbox all day with his friends. So I went to him as both our brains are going to turn to mush. Like, I want to teach you how to write a business plan, and we're going to come up with a really cool restaurant. And I had no intention of opening the restaurant. It was just an exercise to keep our brains going. And it's also how the name came. I threw out some names, and he said those were terrible. And one of the things when the pandemic hit, my wife and I made it a point to teach our two sons historical facts of previous pandemics. And one that stuck in his head was Isaac Newton was quarantined from Cambridge and created calculus and discovered a theory of gravity. So he was like, just name it Isaac's. He did that stuff while he was quarantined. We created a chicken restaurant, just call it Isaac's. And I was like, that's brilliant. I don't have a better name. And so we did that. And then I was able to transition to help some food manufacturers because the restaurants were closed. So with my background in helping CAVA grow and the dips business, I was able to transition and help. I had one client that signed a national deal with Trader Joe's to make 900,000 pumpkin empanadas in the middle of a pandemic. And so I talked to her, and she's like, we got to triple our space. I need more people. I need equipment. We need everything. And everything's closed. So I was like, I'm in. So we expanded our kitchen, new equipment, went from 8 employees to 45 employees. They were working 5 hours a day, 4 days a week, and then went to 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And we were able to accomplish and get all 900,000 empanadas in every single Trader Joe's by October of 2020. Yeah, so after the restaurants opened back up, I was working with different clients, and I just came home one day and I told my wife, I was like, I don't like this anymore. Like, I miss my team. Like, I don't want to solve other people's problems. I'm going to go back to creating my own problems. And I was like, I'm going to open Isaac's. And similar conversation to when I said I was going to CAVA. She's like, no, you're not. I was like, yeah, I am. And she goes, why would you want to open a restaurant? I was like, because that's the only thing I know how to do. I don't know anything else. And she kind of just looked, she's like, yeah, you're right. It is what you do. Go open Isaac's. And so the first one opened February of 23.
Mm-hmm.
We've been pretty fortunate with, feedback. We've won some awards. We've been written up. Keep getting asked to go on local TV. Like it's been, I'm shocked, like how nice it's been. And then our second one opened up this February in Burtonsville, Maryland, which my first job was across the street from where our restaurant is. And I went to elementary school right down the street. So it's kind of homecoming type restaurant.
Yeah, talk about full circle. I bet those pumpkin empanadas flew off the shelves after you got that all set up.
They were pretty popular.
Yeah, during 2020. But talk about your experience, Rob, like your background in terms of, utilizing your skill set of creativity, thriving on chaos, and then improving efficiencies from, full service to fast casual. The list goes on. We are honored to have you on the show. Thus, and we appreciate our daily grinders. I'll say the thanks on behalf of them tuning today's show to learn from you and your story here. Would you say, like, looking back on your journey, you mentioned like you didn't think you were going to open up a business down the road. Is this a good surprise and delight that you've had within your career?
Absolutely. I always said I didn't want to open a restaurant forever. People are like, oh, you should open your own restaurant. I'm like, no, I'm good. It's funny. I'm naturally very introverted. Like when I'm not at work, I don't talk a lot. So being the center of the attention has been a very big learning curve for me. So that was one of the things. Like I would always tell people, like, that's why I'm a cook. I'm in the kitchen, or that's why I'm in charge of operations. I'm the one that you don't know about. We're selling the story. If you know about me, that means I'm not doing my job. And it was comfortable. And so when it came time, just the way everything worked, I was like, you know what, it's time to get uncomfortable and just do it. And so I kind of just forced myself, and I stand out and talk to customers a lot, and sometimes it's exhausting just because it's naturally not what my body wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
But thankfully the customers have been fantastic, and it made it a lot easier on me.
Yeah, really well said. And then, Rob, tell our listeners out here too about Isaac's, what you have to offer there if they haven't visited already, the locations, and congrats on the second one too this year. Perfect timing when we have guests on the show.
Thank you. We so the first one's on Gaithersburg, Maryland, right across the street from Quincy Richard High School. Our second location's in Burtonsville, Maryland, right at the intersection of 329 and 198, both in Montgomery County. We make absolutely everything from scratch. There's nothing comes out of a box. There's no concentrates. There's not one artificial ingredient in the building. We definitely do way more prep than most full service restaurants. It's everything is all natural, no hormones, no additives, no nothing. Like I said, all our chicken is certified halal. All our chicken is gluten-free, including the tenders and the wings. No gluten ever goes in our fryers. It's set up for no cross-contamination. There's a great app that I love. It's called Find Me Gluten Free. That really helps people with celiacs to find places that they can safely eat. And, our stars on that have been really, really, really incredible. Those are the reviews I like reading, actually helping somebody. Um, and I wanted to prove that, you don't need servers. Usually there's this stigma that restaurants with servers are real restaurants. The fast casual, oh, they're not real restaurants. Well, no, we're actually making more than the full service restaurant down the street because we're not using anything frozen out of a box. Um, and so it's, somebody said once, it's not fast food, but it's good food fast. But it's, as cheesy as that sounds, it's true. Um, and I'm also very fortunate. I tell everybody I have the greatest team in the business. At Gaithersburg, I have 4 people in that building that have been with me for 20 years. Um, there, we only hired 3 people that I didn't know, and over the course of 2 years, we've only hired 2 people, and that's because 2 people went to college. Um, and then our new restaurant, Vicky's our GM, and she's been with me for 20 years also. She was 19 and a cashier at Chipotle when I met her, and we've worked together ever since. Um, and everybody in that restaurant has either worked with me and her or just her, and there was nobody new hired. Um, so it makes it so much easier having a solid team that understands me, understands the playbook, and just got to teach them different food, and it's they help make my life a lot easier.
Yeah, that's great. Talk about strong employee retention, and obviously I can tell too what you do both inside the restaurants and outside really makes a difference in respect, but then also brings in the customers at the end of the day, and people continue to fuel their grind at Isaac's. How do you approach menu development, sourcing ingredients, like keeping all natural? Do you work with people that network that you built, being in this space?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. It's helpful that I've been doing this for so long. Um, so I've been able to get. So I do have some really good relationships with vendors, um, even farmers that I've worked with in the past. I say, the chicken farmer mainly is, we use them at CAVA. And so I say, hey, I'm now growing this. It makes it easy because they know me, they know the history, they know the background, they know the potential of what we could do. There's no guarantees. We still got to work hard to make it happen, but there's a potential of growth. And so that helps. It helps with one, making sure we can get the product in, but it also helps us with better pricing, kind of selling the dream. And then as far as menu development, it's all me. I love being creative. Yes, we've got roasted chicken and sandwiches and tenders, wings, sandwiches, salads, sides, but they're different. Um, they're very different than your normal chicken sandwich. They're not beige and tasteless. They're packed full of flavor. They're big. The sides are different. Even the mac and cheese is different than what you're not going to be used to. And it's just, um, I always say, I don't like what other people have. I want everything I have to be different. And then um, I also use the quote from Willy Wonka a lot. We're the music makers. We're the dreamers of dreams. It means our imaginations are our only limitation. So we've got banana pudding frozen custard. We've got chocolate dulce de leche frozen custard. It's just, we were making, originally started with slushies and we switched to juices because juices sell better than slushies. So it's just really being creative and trying to just be me and be myself and be different.
Yeah, setting yourself apart in the industry for sure. You're making my mouth water, and I'm getting hungry as we continue to speak here. Uh, um, talk about a solid current offering here at Isaac's. Definitely our daily grinders. We'll put in the show notes where to find and stop in and grab a bite to eat or a drink, obviously too. Going back to that 0% turnover in your employees, like at both locations, how do you keep and train a great staff and a competitive labor market? And then maybe for our listeners on today's show, would you recommend any advice or best practices in terms of across industries, to making sure to continue to have a positive working environment for their own team? at their business?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer in two things. One, it doesn't matter what industry you're in the people business. I'm in the people business. I just happen to sell chicken. So my job is to take care of the people making the chicken as good as I possibly can, so then they can turn around and take care of the people buying the chicken as best as they possibly can. Um, you know, we don't take ourselves seriously. I mean, we're not building rockets. We're just selling food. Like, just relax and have fun. Um, so laid back, fun environment. You know, it's very family oriented. We laugh, we joke, we make fun of each other. Like, every day is fun in the restaurants. But then the other thing I always say is, you know, if they leave me, they're going to go do the exact same job for somebody else. So if you like them and they're doing a great job, show them the love and respect they deserve, and they don't leave. You know, um, I don't. I had somebody the other day ask me, "Wow, you have two restaurants. How many people work for you?" And I just looked at him. I was like, "Nobody works for me." It's like, "What do you mean? You own a restaurant? You have two restaurants?" I was like, "No." I said, "There's about 50 people that work at Isaac's restaurants." I said, "So I work for 50 people, because my job is to make sure they can do their job as best as humanly possible. If they're happy and they can execute efficiently and quickly and get the food, a great consistent product to the customers, and deliver great customer service, we win." So that's really how, if they ever need anything, we'll help them out. It's truly family atmosphere, and I mean it.
Yeah, talk about family first, and then be able to support your employee, your teams, and then at the end of the day, continue to thrive in this space and help them perform at their best, which you're preaching the words of the podcast here. I also want to talk on too, like the community aspect. Like, what has you mentioned a little bit earlier on in the interview, but how's the response of the community to both your locations?
Great. Gettysburg took time. You have to build the name. You have to earn it. But one of the things that, in designing a restaurant and talk to my family about, my kids, is, you know, restaurants bring people together. You celebrate, you eat. You're happy, you eat. You're mourning, you eat. It brings everybody together. I was like, so we're going to do as best as we can to help the community and the people around us. So we've done a ton of fundraisers, donations, for the month of May last year and this year. May is Foster Care Awareness Month. So we partner with Comfort Cases, who um, donate bags filled with basic necessities to children in foster care systems, so they don't have to carry their belongings in trash bags. So every May 1st, all day long, we give them 15% of all sales. And then for the entire month of May, both stores are donation centers for customers to come and just donate pajamas and backpacks and toothpaste and deodorant, toys and blankets. Um, you know, and we will do this every year, whether we have 2 stores or 200 stores. We're going to do this every store every May. And so it's giving to schools and donating to sports clubs. And, the first 2 years, we donated almost $80,000 just to local schools and charities in Montgomery County. Um, and, when a lot of people say they're going to help or do something, but to actually show that you do it and you mean it, the community kind of rallies behind you, and they'll come eat at your restaurant, because they know you're there to help them as well.
Oh, that's fantastic, Rob. Yeah, actions speak louder than words, and really appreciate what you do for the community and the impact that has tremendously on many people, and making waves too, especially on our show today as well. And we're glad to have a platform to voice that and get people, provide awareness, but also give back at the end of the day and have mindset as well. I also want to touch back too on your newest location here. You mentioned it was across the street where the early days close to where you grew up. How has the opening of that been back on the grind? I mean, we're only a couple months in on the new location.
It's knock on wood. It's been great. It's cool to open up a center that I used to go to when I was a child. The Blockbuster Video that we'd rent movies from was right next door to where I'm at. In my, I never ever would have thought that I'd be opening something there, growing up. But the community and the neighborhood have been so welcoming. I've opened over 100 restaurants around the country, and this is the first one that people have actually thanked me for opening multiple times. Thank you for coming to Burtonsville, or thank you for coming back home and opening this. It's really cool, really, really cool. And, the feedback's been great. The staff has been phenomenal and consistent. So the reviews have been great, and a ton of feedback and ton of repeat customers already. And so, I can't complain. It's been really cool. Now we just have to build it because, we live the brand all day, every day. So we have to remember how small we are and how many people do not know who we are. And there's still people that come to that center every day that has no idea what Isaac's Poultry Market is. So we need to work hard to keep building our name and getting people to come in.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, as we say on the podcast, keep up the grind. But yes. We're excited for the future, and best is yet to come. Speaking of the future here, Rob, what do you hope, what do you want the impact legacy of Isaac's to be?
Impact legacy. I just, hopefully we're fortunate enough to grow a lot of restaurants. But I want people, when they think or hear the word Isaac's, that it's a great restaurant with the best possible ingredients. I know I'm being treated well. I know my body's going to feel well. You don't leave our restaurants and feel like you have a brick in your stomach. So I just want people to think of the name and think, wow, it's a great quality, a great price, friendly atmosphere, and I feel welcomed every time I go in. That's what I want when people hear the name.
Yeah, I love the branding, the messaging, the space, food. Like I said, this is on my list to make it out to your coast to come and dine in and feel on the grind. Yeah, really well said, Rob. Yes, in closing here, we talked about your schedule, your daily schedule. You have quite the grind going on, leading the charge at Isaac's. What's on your daily grind later this year as we look ahead to 2025, like back half of the year?
So what we're working on now is shifting our marketing. I've always done everything very guerrilla marketing, old school, menus on cars, dropping off food at offices, and dropping food off of radio stations, TV channels, and just getting word out. And it's funny, after the pandemic doesn't work as much. So we have to shift to go more digitally. More online ads, more. And so I'm working with a company to help change that, which I've never personally done. So I'm excited to learn something new and learn how to grow a business in a different way that I haven't done in the past. And then we're looking for third location now. We're looking at Howard County, Maryland, Frederick County, Maryland, Fairfax County, Virginia, and Montgomery County, Virginia. So we'll see. No rush. It's a marathon and it's not a sprint. So once the right spot comes up at the right price, hopefully we'll get it and open. If we get one now, we're still looking to open, unless it's currently a restaurant that we don't have to do too much to. It won't open this year. It'll be next year.
Wonderful. Yeah, we are excited. We'll have to follow you virtually here. Us on the Daily Grind team wish you all the best and continued success as always with your as with your businesses. And you gave us a little teaser here. We got location on the horizon, so we might have to get you back on the podcast at the latest and greatest in your neck of the woods, Rob. Yeah. Rob, story very inspiring on today's show. Do you have a word of the day to motivate our listeners out there, or even a quote, saying, mantra?
Go with your podcast. It's just enjoy the grind. If it was easy, it wouldn't be called work. You got to out hustle everybody to get ahead, and just enjoy it. Enjoy the chaos, and remember to have fun. Enjoy it.
Yeah, I like it. Words of wisdom here. Again, speaking as a true daily grinder, I think your quote fits perfectly with your story, what encompasses what you're doing here out in the world, inspiring us on today's show, but really motivating us to level up our game respectively and continue to have fun with our grinds. Love to hear it. Last but not least, Rob, if listeners have questions, comments, want to get in touch with you, want to visit one of the Isaac's locations, how can they do so?
Our website is isaacs.market. As both locations are on it, our online menu, our catering menu. You can also, there's a button on the top right that says contact us. Ask any questions. You also email hello@isaacs.market. That comes to me because there's nobody else but me to get them. So I'll be the one responding personally. And you can check us out on Instagram at Isaac's Poultry Market. And that's it.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Those ways you'll find us.
Yeah. We'll put where to find Isaac's in today's show notes as always. Thanks again for tuning today's episode. A big thank you to Rob for being on the podcast. Thanks again for tuning to today's episode. In the meantime, be sure to follow us on Instagram, X, and Facebook at Daily Grind Pod, and follow our podcast on Spotify and Apple to stay up to date with all of our content and events. Links are in the description. Also, check out our new YouTube channel for exclusive content, including video interviews and highlights from our nonprofit events. Search for Daily Grind Podcast or just follow the link in the description. Lastly, head over to our website, www.kjfwi.org, to shop our merch. Thanks for supporting the grind, and we'll catch you next time. As always, keep grinding.